but I just got out of the shower and I was like, oh, fuck it. Let's just leave it
Gotta let
as
it
is, you
breathe.
know?
Let the dome
Yeah,
breathe.
exactly.
My little nephews got their first haircuts this weekend. I took a day trip to New Orleans to see my grandparents and go down with them, and that was a fun experience. We had a good
Nice.
time.
How old are they?
They're a year and a half,
Nice.
and so they're very aware of things that are happening to their head. But it's amazing how to get kids' attention with a video. I'm sure you've heard of this Miss Rachel. She's very popular with the little kiddos, and all she does is basically zoom in on her face and make silly sounds, and like that's
Really?
all it takes, right?
That's
Basically mumble rap.
hilarious.
Basically mumble rap.
All right.
For
All right. Listen, I don't know about all that. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It's Totally Biased Music with Blake and Anthony. And we got an interesting album today. Fahrenheit Fair Enough by Telefon Tel Aviv. Is that how you say it, Anthony?
Yep, that's
All
correct.
right. So experimental kind of electronic music feel. Very early. What did this come out? 2001.
Yeah.
So Anthony, you probably have more to say about this. So why did you pick it, and how far back do you go with them?
So not super far. I mean, far enough to where Bass Nectar turned me on to the second track on this album, TTV. Came out in a mix, I think, and I had heard it live. So like that was a glimpse into this vein, and that was something that it's basically a rabbit hole, right? So like this is your official introduction, Blake, into the world of IDM. Have you heard this term before?
No.
So great. Fuck yeah. So
something dance music?
Yeah, intelligent dance music. That's the coined term by the people, so it's stuck, right? But
yeah.
In other words, if you hear of artists like Aphex Twin, I'm sure you've heard of him.
Yep.
Aphex Twin, Autechre, Boards of Canada, Telefon Tel Aviv, they're all in this kind of realm of electronic music, and they did this a long time ago, obviously. So like it's been really cool to look at liner notes on the album, because that's really the most insight that I've found on Telefon Tel Aviv. But like basically it's a two-person project. Joshua Eustace and Charles Cooper started this project in New Orleans. So they're based out of New Orleans, which is another kind of just bonus point with this album to me, because that's my hometown, right?
Yeah.
But going into it, it's just been such a journey, because this music, you see roots of today's music in this music, and then you also see like elements that are from the past, whether it's it's funny because the liner notes speak about how this album is almost like a fusion between Chicago house, Detroit techno, and New Orleans bounce music with this electronic flair that was coming from the UK at the time. So they were basically like students of electronic music that were just doing nothing but wanting to create. And this being their first album, it really stands apart because, one, it's incredibly clean. Two, I think it withstands the test of time because it doesn't really, even though it was made, 23 years ago, it doesn't feel like that at all. Like it feels like this album could easily have come out yesterday. So I think that it has very much a golden feel to it because of how old it is, but also how fresh it feels. And this album is another one similar to the L1011, where like I would either play this for people unknowingly to them, like not knowing who they were listening to, and just let them vibe out to it, or at those late night kind of sessions where it's like a come down feel where like you just need something to kind of just bliss out to. This one can do it. And it, I think, also challenges the listener, because this album is such a cool thing, because like, the idea, obviously this idea of like tuning somebody out, right? Like you having a thought and you're not really listening to what they're saying, but you can still grasp pieces. This album does an interesting thing where like you can, and this was the first piece of music that really opened my ears to this way of listening, which is you can follow different paths within the song. So like you can follow these glitchy kind of poppy, sounds that are happening, or you could follow this underlying melody that is kind of just pulsating and breathing in the background. And I think that is something that really speaks to the two artists involved. You know, Josh Eustace, who still does perform as Telefon Tel Aviv, he really hones in this kind of glitchy industrial type of electronic music, whereas Charles Cooper, I imagine, I'm not for certain about this, but I think he brings this melodic, you know, heartbeat to it, which I think it's beautiful, you know. So yeah, I'm excited. This is, like I said, if I'm going to introduce anybody to electronic music or IDM type of music, this is the one that I think is most digestible. It's a very short listen, but I'm excited. And like I mentioned last week, you know, how I'm very upfront with your skepticism, so I'm ready for that. But I don't know. Let's see. Prove me wrong. So this is your first listen, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it is my first listen. I've definitely, and it was probably TTV that I've heard before.
Yeah.
But like this, I'll be honest, I was fucking shocked at what the music sounded like when I started listening to it. Like, I did not expect this type of music from an artist, a group that made this album in 2001. Like, it doesn't, right. That's really hard for me to compute, because TTV especially sounds like Tipper music to me. Like, right. It's very similar with that all those glitchy noises. And I don't know, that kind of blew me away. Like, I did not expect it. I didn't listen to anything prior to that, and I went into it just like kind of blind. And and there's a I wouldn't say like a huge departure, but Fahrenheit Fair Enough is kind of like a warm up, and then TTV is kind of like they start to really let it out, you know, and those sounds and the tempo picks up. And I gotta say, like, I'm always a little hesitant going into Anthony albums, right? I'm like, what am I going to get here? You know, what kind of vibe is Anthony bringing? And I got to say, man, to be completely honest, to be totally biased, I was blown away. This is some gourmet shit right here. This is some gourmet shit, dude.
Ladies and gentlemen, soak it in right now.
It is good electronic music, man. It's weird. It's slow. I mean, not to say like, I don't love all 9 tracks. Like, I do have 2 bottom tracks that we'll get into later, but like as a whole, I wish there was more, you know, right. Like when you said, don't listen to disc 2, like we were just going to basically like, don't listen to the archives. Like, we're just listening to, I was like, man, I kind of wanted to keep it going though, and see like what was going on here, right. You know? So I'm going to continue to listen to it for sure, but it's just like, I don't know, man. It was really, really interesting. And, you know, electronic music with me in general, especially electronic music like this, like I've never been a huge Tipper fan. And outside of Bass Nectar and Pretty Lights and Skrillex, like I don't listen to a ton of electronic music, but this doesn't feel like that kind of electronic music. You know, it's very, I guess,
has like a soul to it.
Yeah. I guess like intelligent is the word. That sounds pretentious. I don't like that they're using that as like the way to describe it, but it's very different, man. And I don't know, it was really cool. So I'm glad that you brought it. I will say, I thought like on first glance that the album cover was a trumpet. I'm now realizing that it's not. Do you know anything about the album art, the cover of the album?
Tell me about it, because I'm staring at it right now.
You don't see a trumpet? Like if you hold it far enough back from your face?
I could see, you know, like a horn and like a neck of it, but I don't know anything about it. That's why I was wondering if you knew any like if you knew there's some story behind it. But knowing these guys, because the name Telefon Tel Aviv has no significance to it.
Interesting.
It's just alliteration. Same with Fahrenheit Fair Enough. It's like there's no real rhyme or reason. They said the tracks within the Fahrenheits are all just late night ramblings that they had making this album. You know, this is one of those 2 young guys in their 20s making an album in their bedroom between 3 and 6 or 7 a.m. Yeah, they said they would go out and just get drunk, but they would feast on electronic music. You know, it's like when you have all these influences happening and there's nothing in your scene, now it becomes an opportunity to create a scene.
Right.
And I think that that's something that they were very conscious of. And I think they set out to make like a very breakbeat electronic record, you know, like 90s electronica music. It is very breakbeat, very glitchy, very like hard and like, like it has a quite heavy downbeat, but this album does not have that. It breathes, it flows,
right.
and this being my kind of intro into IDM music too, where it becomes so thought provoking and so like guiding in a sense. Like it's like meditating, right? You can try to focus on a thought, but then it's gone. And this album kind of does that, where it's never, there's repetitive lines throughout the music, but it's not the same. There are simple additions. There are simple subtractions. It's kind of building and coming down at the same feel. And I think that it's a special thing. And there are artists that can do this live. Tipper is one of them. I haven't brought Tipper to the podcast yet strategically, because I think there's a way to digest his music, and I'm still searching for that right way to show you it, because it's so diverse, right? You can have break beats, you can have ambient tracks, you can have upbeat, crazy electronica, but this album I think is one that it can be very introductory to people without being overwhelming. I'm
sure.
super stoked to hear that response from you, because that's, I think it's undeniable.
I get like, it's definitely post festival, post show vibes, late night at the campsite, late night back at the house, whatever it is. And you're just like, you can feel your body like pulsating, coming down, and I can just feel it, like throw it on in the background and just like melt into the couch and relax a little bit, like, it's perfect for that. So how did you
go ahead.
I was gonna say, how did you find these guys? But I guess it was through Bassnectar, right?
Yeah, it was just digging that way. There was once upon a time I was making set lists like crazy at Bassnectar shows, and that was such a experience for me, not only to like understand what was happening live, but to be exposed to artists that way.
Yeah.
And once I would get an artist on my radar, then I'd go in, and like Telefon Tel Aviv, this being their first album, it like really it stands apart big time from most debut albums, right? And the other albums that they put out since, there's at least two more that they put out together, and then after Charles passed away, there was at least an EP or some just smaller things. But this one's different. It really does. It sets itself up to be a standalone, beautiful piece of artwork. That was kind of how they came on my radar. But it is interesting. Yesterday, I was listening to it outside, and I was kind of doing a project out there. And I think Spotify does this album a disservice by having that archive immediately after the fact, because I listened to it all the way through and also got deep into the archives, not even realizing it, because just being completely immersed by the music. But when you listen to this album as it is, just the 9 tracks after Fahrenheit, the last one, you get that feeling that you just mentioned, which is, I want more of this, right? This was like, it leaves you with an afterglow. And I think that when music does that, it really, movies do that too. Like when you are immersed in something and you come out of it, concerts are exactly that. You want to go back into that world, or you want to just bask in this afterglow feeling that it's given you. So this one does it every time for me.
Yeah. No, I like it a lot. So let's get into top tracks. What do you got?
So, I could put this whole thing on there, but I'll pick 3 specifically. Number 3, I've got Life is All About Taking Things In and Putting Things Out. This one I just wrote Bliss Out, Melt track. It's right smack in the middle, but it really gives it this. It's very minimal. The whole album's very minimal in a sense, but like it gives it this very thought-provoking point in the album where there's not a lot of stuff going on, but so beautiful. So that's my number 3 track. Life is All About Taking Things In, Putting Things Out. Number 2, I've got John Thomas on the Inside Is Nothing But Foam. Hilarious track title. When this album, when I first came across it, I was looking at the track titles and like, what the fuck is this? If you don't have feet, why do you need legs? It's like, just, it goes to show you like track titles are really irrelevant in a sense. Like you could have any random pairing of words, but it's not going to take away from this music, right?
No, that's why the pod name episodes were just random bullshit that I thought of at that time to put on the fucking, like, they make no sense.
Right. But it works, you know? So it's like, this album, like I said, it's you take your expectations and get rid of them, because it really doesn't matter. The music is going to bring you to a place that is just undeniable. But so my number 2 track, John Thomas on the Inside, is Nothing But Foam. The timbre timbre is a really super powerful tool when it comes to music. Derek talks about it all the time, but timbre, it's spelled Timbre. It is this kind of resonance that you get when you start to combine frequencies together, and it literally can like tickle your eardrums. It like gives it this kind of like, I don't know how to describe it in words, but you know it when you hear it. And this album is full of it, which is why I texted you and like said, you know, headphone listening is really, it's not required, but is highly encouraged, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't get that feeling in a car necessarily or on any other speakers. Do you?
I will say, like, so that high pitched, like, ticking sound in TTV, I don't know if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But like it, like in the car when it came on, I was like, what the I was like looking, it was like it pierces your ears in a way that, like, it's not unpleasant, it's just like it feels like it's in your brain almost. It's weird, dude. It was a weird noise.
Exactly. You know, and like that frequency, there are artists who I call super producers that can tap into these frequencies that are almost like it's ineffable. Like you can't really put into words, but that point, I know exactly the sound you're talking about. It is like very, very high pitched, but not unpleasant at all. They nail it. Right. But that again is the beauty of these super producers that are out there being able to with the technology they're given, which this is 2000s technology still, right? Able to come out with something so clean and so profound, really. But like I said, that track is super beautiful. The whole thing is beautiful. The number 1 track for me is the intro track, Fahrenheit Fair Enough. It is like, I mentioned it earlier. It is the idea of listening to paths within a track where you can follow this. I wrote chaos and beauty, and you can follow both paths and still end up at this beautiful like soundscape wonderland part at the end, where it's just kind of that this melody is building throughout the track, and then it finally just puts you there, and it's just it's so special to me. And fun fact, Papadozio covers that track.
Nice.
Here and there, yeah. So they're a big influence on them too. So all this music is so intertwined, right? Whether it's Donna Ross and Biggie putting a track together, or these guys, you know, and it's just like, it's the beauty of music is that it is from a child to an elderly person, to a person from another country to a local, it can speak to all of them in super special ways, and it doesn't have to hit the same, you know, craving that they might have musically, but it is what it is. And I think it speaks volumes to just cultures of people.
And I think what's different about like electronic music in particular is electronic music is a universal language, right? Like if there's no lyrics in it, everybody's hearing and interpreting the same things. Sounds. They're interpreting it in different ways, but they're hearing the same sounds, right? Like I've listened to, you know, Amanda will play some artists that are like French artists, right? That they're rapping or singing in French, and like I enjoy it, but I don't know what the fuck they're saying. So it's like I don't interpret it the same way. Whereas electronic music, that's why these electronic artists, that's why Skrillex does numbers in South America, right? Because it's a universal sound, and that's what's so special about electronic music that other genres don't have. Not to say that American artists pull huge numbers overseas, like that's even in Spanish-speaking countries, like I don't think it limits them, but they're limited in a way that electronic music isn't, where people don't have to interpret these lyrics. They don't have to look it up. They don't have to speak any language. It's just what they're hearing. And I've always thought that's what's really cool about electronic music. What's really special about it is it's just a universal language, honestly, you know? But getting into my top tracks. So number 3, What's the Use of Feet If You Haven't Got Legs? Another great song title. This song is like, I didn't think I was going to like it at first because like the beginning, there's so much going on. It's like fucking chaos at the beginning almost. Like even like leading up to like the minute point, there's just a lot of different sounds, different tempos it feels like going on. Like it's kind of like a cluster, right? But it's done in a really cool way where they're using all of these different sounds. And like you said, you know, I need to go back and listen and pick out pieces of it and just focus on like, oh, this part of the track, you know, or this part of the track. But as it goes on, it almost like settles into itself and becomes kind of towards the end one cohesive piece that just plays out really, really well.
Oh yeah. Exactly.
So I really liked it. You know, I think it's the perfect length for that song. You know, there's some 7-minute songs on here. I think this one is perfect at 4:15. So I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
My second one.
Hold on. I want to just quote because what I wrote is exactly what you said, right? I wrote, you know, lots of glitch, lots of pulsating, and then I wrote at this point you get lost in the sounds. You know, like it's such a collage that it's like you can't. I mean, unless you literally take your headphones off, like you're sucked into this, and you want to see where it goes. So that.
Number 2 for me, Fahrenheit Fair Enough. Same thing that you said, right? Like it's 6 minutes and 40 seconds, but it's a really good intro track, right? Like you get those, like I said earlier, you get those kind of glitch pop sounds and those weird, I call them like the spider noises, right? It sounds like a spider crawling on your brain almost. And you kind of get it like in a small dose in this song. But it's peaceful, right? Like it's a nice, like, hey, get ready. Like this is kind of what the music is going to be like. It doesn't like hit you over the head with the type of music there, especially because like if somebody hasn't experienced this type of music before, hasn't heard it before, you come out of the gate with something heavy, people are gonna be like, what the fuck is, it's gonna be too much. So I think like they played it perfectly with Fahrenheit Fair Enough, and it's just like a nice song to just listen to and let ride. And then number 1 for me is TTV. I think it's exciting. Like I said, those there's sounds in here, I swear to God, I've never heard before that I didn't know existed. Like that were just like piercing me to my soul. And it was like unnerving, but in a cool way. Not like unnerving when you watch Midsummer, but unnerving in like a good way where I'm like, I want to revisit this, you know, now that I know what I'm in for. So I just think it's a really, really cool song, really interesting, and it picks up the tempo a little bit. About a minute in, the song really starts to catch fire, and I don't know, it's just great composition. And it's like I said, I didn't know what to expect going into this, but it's still mind blowing to me that they were able to make music like this in the early 2000s. Like that's crazy. I can't imagine. I would love to know like the technical ability it took for them to do it and how much time it took and things of that nature. But to hear that they just like did it overnight after partying or whatever, coming home and just letting their brain like go to work, you know, or whatever they were doing, it's like that's crazy to me.
Yeah. Well, something that I did read is that, I mean, it mentions like thousands of hours, you know, like I think that they finished it, they wrapped it in 2000, but they still spent 6 months or sent it off and were waiting 6 months for mastering too. And mastering's a big factor for this album, right? But yeah, I mean, even if it was made in 2010, you'd still be like, geez, this is still, if it was made yesterday, it's still fucking incredible. So yeah. And I think it's widely renowned as one of the like, I don't know. Did you find any reviews on it in a sense of a?
So I only found one, which I'll get into later, but no, I didn't see like a ton of reviews. I'm sure like they have a niche community that is really into them that has talked about it, but no, like I haven't seen a ton of reviews on it.
Gotcha. Well, as far as my reviews are no bottom tracks for this album for me. You know,
none.
This is I mean, if the only track that I didn't put a star next to was Lotus Above Water, but I think it is what it is. It's a pulsating kind of intermission track for me between TTV and John Thomas. But like, I think it's all necessary. I think it all blends into itself. And if that track wasn't there, it still would be incredible. But yeah, no bottom tracks for me on this piece of beauty.
No, that's fair. I have Lotus Above Water. So I have Lotus Above Water and Introductory Nomenclature, and I have both of them because they both did the same thing for me, where like I was left wanting more, you know, and I get having, but like not in the sense of like life is all about taking things in and putting things out, right? Like, I think that track belongs where it is, and like you said, it's kind of a intermission almost, but it works and it's positioned in the album. But going from TTV to Lotus Above Water, I'm like, all right, man, like, give me something, like pick it up a little bit, give me some weird sounds or something like that. Like, and I don't know, maybe I think like even when I was listening to it, while I didn't particularly like enjoy it a ton, I think if I listened to it in a certain scenario, certain state of mind, it would be an enjoyable track. Like, I don't think it's a bad song. But it's just, I don't know. I was left wanting more with both of those songs. So not to say they're bad tracks. It's just something was missing for me.
I get it. But
you know,
like you said, if you had to choose, right?
Yeah.
But still, it's a special one. And like I said, I'm geeking out big time just the responses I'm getting from you. So we got hope, people.
I really think we should have, just thrown in the archives to see kind of what they were about and talk about them a little bit. But I didn't listen to them when you told me to stop. I was like, all right, I'm not going to overload myself, and I'll just focus on the first ones. But I need to go back and listen to them.
Maybe, we'll do this. Maybe in the future we bring a guest on who maybe hasn't heard either. Like, we just find out, and then we'll just go balls deep into Telefon Tel Aviv.
Yeah, no, for sure. Hell yeah. Well, so like I said, the only review I had was that I could find was Pitchfork, and you're not going to like this. Well, take a guess. What do you think?
Is this a rating out of
10? Out of 10.
Oh God. Well, fuck Pitchfork. I'll just put that out there. But if they give it, I want to say if they give it anything below an 8, it's insulting. It deserves much higher. But we'll say Pitchfork gives it a 6.
They gave it a 6.8. 6.8.
Yeah,
they said
again, very disappointing.
Oh, it doesn't really say, there's not like an opening. It says, for guys who've worked closely with Nine Inch Nails, Telefon Tel Aviv's Charles Cooper and Justin Udis sound remarkably calm and contemplative. Far from being an album of corporately bloated manufactured angst, Fahrenheit Fair Enough is so laid back that it's permanently supine. I think that's how you say that word. So I don't know what Pitchfork is trying to say.
It's like laying on your back.
Yeah. I mean, it is relatively, I wouldn't call it like, it doesn't seem that laid back to me. Like, there's some laid back songs, but it's not the word I would use to describe this album,
Well, if you were to compare it, I think, to guys like Autechre or Aphex Twin, yes, it's laid back, but it is a special, like, maybe it's just not IDM enough for them. I'm going through the list of top 50 and I'm at 38 and still don't see this album. And that is very disheartening because I don't disagree with some of the other ones they have, Pitchfork, but yeah, it's not even in their top 50. You can get the fuck out of here. Am I back?
Oh, wait. Yeah, you're back. Yeah, I mean, it's Pitchfork. What do you expect?
Okay,
such is life.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
But what do you rate it at?
So, yeah, no surprise. I give it a 10. This is one of the handful of albums I had in my back pocket to say I'm bringing 10s to the podcast, and this one's it. So 10 out of 10 for me. Deserves nothing less. So don't break my heart, Blake. Tell me what.
No, I'm not gonna break your heart. I'm gonna give it a. All right, I was gonna give it a 7.5, but I know it's gonna upset you, so I'm gonna give it an 8. Here's the problem.
Here we go.
Here's the problem. It needs to be longer, man. It needs to be longer. Okay, that's a problem for me. And then the 2 tracks that left me wanting more, so I got to dock points for that. But like, this could have been a 13-track album, and I would have listened to the whole thing. But I guess everybody has their vision. They have their reason for it, I'm sure. So it's understandable. But yeah, it's good, man. It's good, and I'm glad that it was something that I really enjoyed. It wasn't a Before Sunrise vibe where I was kind of like forcing myself to get through it.
Oh, man. So we'll circle back there at some point. But like I said, if this album was too long, then that would be more of a gripe on the album. So I think that any context where you can leave people wanting more, it's worth doing versus maybe overdoing it, right? But yeah, I think this one, it does stand the test of time. And I would love to get any listeners, and I might do this too, excuse me, I would love to hear like a young person's perspective on this album. Like no context, no nothing. Listen to a song. You could pick a song, probably be easiest for them, and get their perspective on it. Because I think it is too interesting to not like make people think, right?
Yeah.
And the beauty aspect of it too is just undeniable.
So yeah,
that would be an interesting little side project.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so let's get into that. Was Telefon Tel Aviv, Fahrenheit, fair enough. So go listen to it if you haven't. Sorry, it was a shorter review, but it's only a 9-track album, so you know. But it's what it needed, you know. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Let's get into rides or dies. What do you got?
All right, so my rides or die. First time to bring this band to the.
Oh wait! Hang on. Riverside is saying Anthony's browser is preventing recording. Ask Anthony to refresh the page. Oh, God, I hope that wasn't happening earlier. Try to refresh.
It's okay. It said it might have 2 tracks, but I'm going to refresh and then come right back.
Just a little technical difficulties. You know how it is at TBM. We still haven't figured this out. We're like 60 episodes in. It's like over 60 hours, and we're still trying to figure it out. You know, it is what it is.
It's part of the learning curve, right? But yeah, I'm back, and we'll figure it out in post, right? Yeah. Trey still goes producing this podcast, by the way. So
yeah, we'll make him figure it out.
More work for Trey. Yeah.
So what do you got for?
Okay, so my rise or die. Perpetual Groove is the band. Teakwood Betts is the track. This was my intro to P Groove, and God, I fucking love this song. You know, I was very high at a show one day, and P Groove was playing, and I looked at my friend while this song is going. I said, I could live in the bass line of this song. That was a direct quote from me.
Wait, how do you spell the song?
Teakwood, so Teak.
Yeah, Teakwood Betts.
And I've heard Betts and beats my whole life as far as understanding P Groove. By the way, let's see. Yeah. So it is
I would say Betts,
right?
Yeah, I would say Betts.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I love this song. Like I said, it's so contagious, you know, that just intro bass line. When you hear that live, it's like, oh, we're going on a journey and everyone's invited. You know, it's like it is, like I said, this is a bass line you can hang out within, and it drives the heartbeat of this song. And I love P Groove. They're like second favorite band behind Papadozio, probably. So I love it. What do you think?
Yeah, I like this song. I don't know if I've seen Perpetual Groove. I mean, I know the name definitely, and I'm sure they've made rounds in the festival circuit that we've been at. But I don't think I've seen them, and I really like this song. It's really a vibe. I like the guitar more than the bass line, like that kind of melodic up and down they're doing. Mm-hmm. It's a nice vibe, so I like it a lot. Good pick. Oh, yeah. And would you would consider them a jam band, right?
Yeah. So I thought about this a lot after the Papadozio episode, and you kind of asked like, how would you categorize them? And there's a term, jamtronica, that I think encapsulates these types of bands where they perform with live instruments. They have electronic influences, synthesizers, samples, things like that. And then they also stretch out their tracks, or they go in different journeys within their tracks. So they're that type of band. They don't jam. They don't stretch things out or explore as much as Papadozio does, but they're in that same vein. And they will sometimes have a guest female vocalist come and sing with them, which is pretty powerful. They're from Atlanta, so there's a lot of Southern roots within their music. But you're not going to see them again. They're a very small niche following band, right? Yeah. So they'll play at bars and things like that. But fuck, if you ever get a chance, it's worth doing. But like I said, don't be surprised if there's not a lot of people there. But they're in that vein of, I don't know why they don't have this huge notoriety, but it's whatever. Like I said, more room to dance.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I picked Master of Puppets by Metallica. And you know what? I picked it because it's a fucking classic. And I don't care if Stranger Things blew it up and made it really popular, you know. But it's a fucking... Look, Metallica, always going to hold a special place in my heart. I saw them at Lollapalooza, one of the best shows I've ever seen. Master of Puppets, forever a classic. That album is a classic. And it just always gets me going, dude. Master of Puppets always gets me going. So I'm sure you've heard it before, but what'd you think?
Yeah, I mean, I guess me and Metallica, like I said, we tend to clash.
Oh, because of the
emotionally.
Napster thing,
Yeah,
right?
man. I
Yeah,
mean, it's like that has really stained my perception of Metallica. But I'll say this. I mean, man, you make me do this. Give bands rides that I don't want to, but like I get it. It's a classic track. It's a smasher.
Yeah.
But what I wouldn't give for like a Muppet spoof of this track of like give me Jim Henson with some puppets like going crazy. Like that's where my brain wants to see, right?
Well, look, I understand the beef. Like you and I are both. Look, I'm always going to support pirating, and I know people think it's stealing from the artist. I think it's stealing from the record label, which is very different. So I'm always going to support pirating. So I get your beef there, but in their minds, they probably felt like they were being robbed. And you have a little empathy, Anthony. Have a little empathy.
I mean, we went into good conversation on that episode. What was that episode? Was it Metallica? We did the Black Album. Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
So like that one's in the past. Y'all can go dig and find that. But like my thought has always been music should be accessible, right? And if you enjoy an artist, you're going to share it with someone, and then you're going to buy tickets or you're going to buy a shirt or whatever, right? So like there comes support in that sense. But yeah, I mean, I get it. It's just 2000s again, where everyone's thinking the shit's going to hit the fan. But like sharing files is no different than giving someone a CD or letting them borrow a DVD or something like that. It's like it can go both ways. But I'll give it a ride for the sake of puppetry. Bring it back to puppets.
All right. That's fair. That's very fair. All right. So getting into our movie, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. David Fincher directed. Rooney Mara plays Lisbeth Salander. Daniel Craig, Mikkel Blomkvist. Robin Wright's in there. Stellan Skarsgård is in there. He's phenomenal. I'm probably butchering his name, but he's phenomenal in this movie. And I've seen this movie probably 10 times. I fucking love it. I love Fincher. I love the whole. And I told you, I said last week, so Stieg Larsson, he planned to write 10 books for The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. He wrote 3, and then he died of a heart attack. And he got trapped in an elevator and died of a heart attack. And his wife, I believe, continued to write the books. So I think there's 4 more at this point, which I don't plan to read because it's not him writing them. He had like rough copies and ideas of where he wanted to go. But the third book ends on a note that could have just ended the series. Like it ends in a perfect way. And it still sticks with me to this point. I read them when I was young. I read them when I was in high school. And it's upsetting to me that David Fincher didn't get the chance to do all 3 because The Girl Who Played with Fire is the second one and The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest is the third one. And the second one is, if I could recommend a book to somebody, you got to read the first one, but the second book is insane. But the reason I say that is because this movie is like spot on to the book. It is as close to a movie adaptation of a book that you are going to get. And I think they nailed the casting. I think they nailed the writing. Everything about it is so good. I can't speak highly enough of this movie. And David Fincher is obviously David Fincher. Like he knows what he's doing. The score is crazy. The shots, the scenery. So yeah, what did you think? Is this your first time watching it?
No, I had seen it before. I'd seen it once before and it left an impact on me then. And then seeing it again with a more critical kind of just viewing aspect of it, it did the same thing, man. I mean, Fincher delivers on so many levels of his films. And this one, I wrote, like his greens are so slimy and so raw. And like the tones that they're able to create throughout this film really, I think just speak to what it was meant to be. I mean, like you've read the book, so like you get it. And like to hear that comment on how closely related they are, it's amazing to hear because that's what it needs, just the intro scene is so raw and so gripping, and you got Immigrant Song playing, right? Or a cover of it. It's fucking perfect, and like, throughout the film, you kind of, you get to learn how like this immigrant mentality kind of does take a hold in a sense of the Skarsgård character who's done all this fuckery, right? But I think it delivers so much. Mara Rooney, fucking amazing actress.
Yep.
You know,
Kills it. I mean,
dude. She doesn't have to say anything really. Her tone and her face and her body language speaks volumes, and like she goes through some shit. And I was going to ask you, without spoiling it, all the other books are about that character, Elizabeth, right?
Yeah. So it's about her and Mikkel.
Is there any backstory? Like, she mentions her backstory in this movie about how she tried to she burned her father.
Yeah. So what's really interesting is, I'm glad you brought that up. So I always thought it was interesting they put that in this movie, which maybe kind of hints that they never planned to make the other two, but you don't find out about what she does until the second book. And I'll tell you like more about it unless you want to read them, and then I won't. But
I mean, no,
she does, like, she becomes a ward of the state when she's young, because she does basically her whole reason for being the person that she is because her father was a rapist and a abuser, and raped and abused her mother and her. And so when she was young, she set him on fire basically to kill him, and became a ward of the state from that point. Which is really interesting because, like, you know, in the movie, he says, you know, she's super apprehensive until he's like, I want you to help me catch a killer of women. And then he's like, okay, now she's like, all right, let's fucking do it. And I think, like, in her character, like, man, the books are they're so good. And her story, what's interesting is there's a pivotal event that happens in the second book. And so for the second and third book, they spend almost those two books apart from each other, but their stories are intertwined in a really interesting way. But this is the only book that they kind of have this relationship and they're working in tandem together. And I think in the movie, their dynamic is just so interesting. And I love when he first meets her and she's like, if you put a hand on me, I'll do more than alarm you. And she has her taser behind her. And then cut forward an hour and she's like trying to have sex with him. And he's like, I don't think this is a good idea. And she's like, well, you work with what's her face? And that seems fine. You know?
She's like, a badass.
She's the best.
Mm-hmm. And just like I said, just the way she carries herself, right? I mean, like, she comes across to unknowing people as like potentially this weak, you know, unstable person, right? But homegirl's, she's got it together. You know, I mean, that's the thing, Laura, like, I can imagine how in depth a book can go into her experiences and just go off, because this girl gives no fucks. Right.
Yeah.
And she's willing to sacrifice herself too. Right. Knowing too, I mean, assuming she had experienced a bunch of trauma in the past, but like to see it happening and to see how she sees it happening too, and is willing to double down on that to get justice, I guess, against her wrongdoers. It's pretty remarkable.
And the most satisfying, like, revenge of any movie ever, when she goes to her council worker's house and just fucking fucks that guy up. It's so satisfying. And like, I just think it's like, and what's crazy is his role in the next two books is really interesting, because a lot of the shit that happens to her is because of his desire to basically ruin her life. Like, he continues to be a character in these books. And it speaks to, like, I think, like, the movie as a whole, the mystery, it speaks more to Stieg Larsson's ability to write, but David's ability to direct, to the way that the mystery builds, right? From the very beginning going all the way to the end, where you're kind of like, who, like, when I was reading the book, I'm like, who is it? You know, like, what is, you can't really tell who it is. And they take you along for this journey. And then the oh shit moment when you realize that it's Martin, and she realizes at the same time that he realizes in the movie. Like, I love that scene where he takes me out of the basement, and then it goes to Elizabeth, and she goes, "Hello, Martin." When she sees him in the picture, like, she makes that connection. Like, they time that so perfectly in the movie, where it's bouncing back and forth between those two scenes. And I just think it's really cool. And he plays, like, Stellan's role. He plays Martin so creepily and so perfect. Like he's such a creep, dude. He's so like intimidating, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he plays that like sick, twisted asshole figure super well. You know, I mean, Dune is a really good, you know, example of that too, where he plays the Baron, I think, is his character there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the way that, like I said, the way that, or like you mentioned, the way the story is being told, because it's like a murder mystery film, right? Where you have these investigators kind of going their own routes, and then their paths cross, and then all the while trying to figure out what this family is all about. Really like that, and this being like obviously before a film like Knives Out or The Glass Onion came out, right? But Daniel Craig plays that investigator role, in a great way. I've not seen any of the James Bond films, but
oh,
this
dude,
one,
gotta get on those
really?
for sure.
Oh,
dude, the Daniel Craig James Bonds are great, man.
God. See, that's like that response, you know, is really what pushes me out the door.
No,
say, I can do without.
You can skip Quantum of Solace, which is the second one, but you should watch all the other ones because they are good. They are good. I mean, look, it's James Bond. You know, you can't go in there thinking they're like, oh, it's going to change your life, but it's a fun movie.
But the thing is, James Bond has never had any, never prodded any interest from me at all. And it must have been when we were kids, everyone was playing GoldenEye and I'm playing Donkey Kong. I'm like, why are y'all playing fucking that game? There's nothing to it. You know, I want to go in story mode, right?
Anthony, if you can't relate, if you couldn't see yourself as James Bond at one point in your life, that's a you problem, you know? Yeah. I always saw myself as James Bond, you know? I still do.
Oh, man. That's what separates us, hey?
But, yeah, I think overall. Also, I don't know if you remember the first time you watched it, but did you suspect that, spoiler alerts for everybody that hasn't watched it, but did you suspect that Harriet was still alive, that she was pretending to be her sister, or was that a shock to you?
It wasn't. I don't think it was a shock to me, because the second go round, I still wasn't like sure if I remember what had happened before. So I was still a little gray, and that just kind of speaks to the storytelling aspect of the film. But it wasn't like a major bomb that went off for me. Yeah. I mean, the bombs were the rape scenes, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, like, those were like...
I skipped them, by the way. I still skip them. Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, well, there's a note for future reference, because there's a movie that I'll tell you what it's called Irreversible. The most difficult to watch rape scene ever in that movie. Yeah, so I'll just leave it at that. You probably will never watch it. I won't bring it to the podcast then, but it's fucking crazy. I mean, to know that these films are made with everyone's consent, you know, in a situation like that, it's almost hard to believe, right?
Yeah,
but
it's fucking brutal.
Speaks to how good they are at what I do. You know?
Yeah, that scene is like the thing is, in the book it's fucking worse, if you can believe that. Exactly. And like I knew it was coming in the movie, and like when I saw it in theaters, obviously I couldn't skip it. But ever since I have every repeat watch, and they chop it when you watch, because I have it on I have a DVD, a Blu-ray of it.
Hell yeah.
And they chop it to where as soon as she gets to the apartment, you can click skip, and then it's her leaving the apartment. So it just that cuts the whole thing out for me. So I'm like, I've already seen it. I know what happens. I read the book. No fucking thanks. And I just go on to the next part.
Well, I will say this though, because at first, or I guess I should say at second watch, right, during the rape scene in the bedroom at his house, she looks back, and I thought she was looking at the keys for the handcuffs, but it turns out to be the camera that's recording her. So that was more of a shock to me, I think, than the reveal of Harriet being, you know, still alive. But again, it just speaks to how badass Elizabeth is. She's always she's got shit in her back pocket to say, hey, you fucked me once, all right, now it's over, right? Or at least it's not even over, because she keeps like holding this over this guy's head. So that's where it does pique my interest to see how that dynamic develops over time, because she has a great line is saying like, quit checking out tattoo removal websites, you know? It's like, she's watching, you know?
Yeah, so. It's great. And her character is great. But Yeah, I'm glad you rewatched and liked it. Always going to be it's one of those movies where like if people there's a handful of movies where if people haven't seen them, I'm like, oh, I'll bring you the hard copy. You got to watch this, and this is one of them for sure. Like a friend of mine at work hasn't seen it, so I told him I'm going to bring him the Blu-ray for him to watch. But definitely one of those. All right, so next week, what do you? Oh, I have the album.
You got the album. Mm-hmm.
So we are going to do because apparently. You don't know who these guys are, which is insane to me. We're going to do Hyperdrama by Justice. So everybody check out Hyperdrama by Justice. Woo! You're in for a ride.
Any dollar signs and spelling justice?
No, and I don't know why you would say that, Anthony. So let me tell you something. Since
what's it called again?
It's called Hyperdrama. Since you apparently don't know who these guys are, they're an electronic duo from Europe that put out their first album in 2007. You've never heard "Dance to the DANCE" 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? You've never heard that song?
Never.
Oh my god! I told Trey and Christian because I was like, Anthony's never heard of these guys, and they're like, that's not true. There's no way that's true. And
I mean, we'll see after this listen if anything like sparks, as far as being familiar sounds to me. But no, so far.
All right. Well, we're doing Hyperdrama. It's their newest album. It's their latest release. So I'm excited for it, man. Yeah. I'm really excited, and I'm excited to hear your take on it. What are we doing for a movie?
So, all right. So I'll give you the option, okay? Because either way, you need to see both of these films. But so Mad Max Fury Road is an option for you, right? You just got a bike. You're getting crazy. Got to show you what crazy looks like. Plus, Furiosa is coming out next week. So that's one option. Option number 2, which was brought up in the last podcast, is the fact that you haven't seen Hardball. Hardball is required viewing from any human, but you cannot look up anything about this movie until you watch it. Because there are moments that need to be revealed in real time so you can feel what we feel. So you got 2 options. You got time. So it's up to you. Which one? Brian Robbins is the director of Hardball. This is a fun fact. Brian Robbins has directed Good Burger, has directed Varsity Blues, has directed what else? The Perfect Score. And there's this documentary he made called The Show. About hip hop, and it came out in 1995. So I'm gonna have to find that film, and I'll get it to you somehow. Yeah. But like I said, you got Hardball or Mad Max Fury Road.
I think we should do Mad Max because Furiosa is coming out. Yeah. Because I would like to rewatch it before Furiosa. For sure.
I was gonna rewatch it anyway too, but the fact that you just had to show the world your new ride, I think it makes sense. But for real, don't look up anything about Hardball. We'll circle back to that, or we'll do an aside. We'll figure it out. We'll figure out a way to watch it and talk about it
for sure. Well, hopefully your track uploads. If not, then this whole episode's going to be a waste. So if you guys are hearing this, then thank fucking God. Thank God.
All right, brother. Fingers crossed.
We will see you soon. Thanks for jumping on, everybody. Thanks for listening, and we will catch you guys later.
Peace.